Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sustainable Finance Podcast. My name is Paul Ellis, and I'm your host for these programs about developments in this fast-growing industry. Laura Rapaport is the founder and CEO of Northbridge, a company that provides lower cost of capital to ensure that resilient and sustainable real estate projects have the flexibility required for completion. This year, Laura led her team at Northbridge to secure a $1 billion commitment from the Carlyle Group to facilitate the origination of CPACE, that's C-PACE, a long-term fixed-rate credit product secured by a special assessment. Hello, Laura, and welcome to the Sustainable Finance Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here today, and we can't wait to learn about CPACE, so we're going to jump right in. Tell our followers what CPACE is. What is CPACE financing, and why is CPACE such a valuable private credit tool for investors in the current market?
Sure. So CPACE, which stands for Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy, is a form of long-term, 20 to 30-year, fixed-rate financing that can be used for energy efficiency, water efficiency, resiliency, seismic improvements, and other types of sustainable development. And it is an assessment. It's not a mortgage. It's paid back through real estate taxes over a long duration. And so it's set up as a form of private credit to incentivize borrowers and lenders, and really developers, to build a more efficient building, and in turn have very effective financing to be able to pay for these improvements. Another benefit that we're seeing from the CPACE is that in addition to being able to incentivize borrowers and developers to build more efficient buildings, it can also be used as a very effective capital markets tool if this developer or buyer has already built or is buying a building that's already been built. So it is not only being used as a form of very effective financing for construction and renovation on a go-forward basis, but it is also being used as a form of refinance or rescue capital if the work has already been done. It is fully assumable, it is fully prepayable, and it can never, ever accelerate, which means that the payment, when due, will sit senior to the first mortgage, but in no scenario can we ever accelerate the outstanding principal balance. It's available in 40 states and available for all asset classes except for certain condos. And so it can really be used for all different types of real estate in a myriad of situations. And it can be applied for a number of different uses, which makes it extremely attractive today for a variety of people throughout the country.
Okay, well, of course, for our audience, one of the things that people are most concerned about regarding real estate properties these days is what is the projected impact on carbon emissions and energy use from CPACE?
Absolutely. So just to talk about that, because the magnitude is pretty staggering. According to Pace Nation, I happen to be a very proud board member. Pace Nation has estimated that PACE projects to date will reduce building sector carbon emissions by 3 million metric tons and save 10 billion kilowatt hours of energy and generate over 19 billion in total economic benefit for local communities. To put that in perspective, 3 million tons of carbon would require 1.2 million acres of forest sequestration in 1 year. 3 million tons of carbon also equals the emissions of 3 million round-trip flights from New York to London. So clearly very substantial. And an incredible added benefit of using this financing is the true impact that we can have on the environment for projects on a go-forward basis, or to quantify for people who have already built their projects to a sustainable level for work that has already been done. Another interesting fact that I think is pretty compelling is that if PACE were used in 15% of eligible commercial and residential projects, in buildings in each state that's available. It would reduce carbon emissions by 372 million tons and save 1 trillion kilowatt hours of energy.
Wow.
This is the equivalent of 80.9 million cars driven in the year, or 1/3 of all cars in America. 372 million tons of carbon is also the equivalent of 149 million acres of forest to sequester in a year, approximately the size of Texas and New Mexico combined. And lastly, what I think is really interesting, this 15% also is about 7.6% of total US annual emissions. So truly substantial. And it's a way for people, whether in a large way or even small, to make that difference, one building at a time, one portfolio at a time, to really help change the conversation and the impact on the environment.
So those are amazing data points, Laura, and tremendous potential for reducing carbon emissions. What kind of upgrades can CPACE be used for, and how big is the market?
Exactly. So when you think about this, it's both awe-inspiring and yet people think, well, how can I get there? And the answer is it can be big or small changes. It can be everything from energy efficiency projects. Now, I come from the development world. I've spent much of my career building buildings. And when I hear energy efficiency, and I've built some very large commercial buildings that happen to be very sustainable and very efficient, I know how hard it was to build these at the time, and the laws have gotten more stringent. And so immediately my mind goes to, I have to be net zero, I have to be passive house. But the answer is, well, we welcome that. And we think that's fantastic. Not everybody will. Not everybody knows how to. It's not always going to pencil out. And the answer is, you don't have to be able to go to the highest level of sustainability to be able to achieve this level of reduction. Things that will count, that will allow you to access this financing, is everything from HVAC, your heating, ventilation, air conditioning, upgrading to more efficient HVAC. It is also lighting upgrades, LED lighting, high performance insulation, windows, more efficient curtain wall, doors, roofs, things that building automation systems, things that on the energy efficiency side, many developers are already doing because it's best practice for a more effective building. Whether you have laws like a local law 97 or a BERDO requiring some of these changes, or you are a developer and you are already seeing that these changes not only attract tenants, but really inure to the positive benefit to your bottom line. On top of that, it's also renewable energy. So your photovoltaic panels, your solar, your wind, EV charging, battery storage, but also water conservation projects. So low flow plumbing and fixtures, very important out west and in the Southwest, and frankly in all buildings, to really make sure that we are saving water. And there's certain requirements in certain areas for that. It's landscaping, more efficient pool heaters, as well as irrigation systems and smart technology for that, so we can use these resources more effectively. Resiliency improvements. These are things that are required on the West Coast for seismic hardening. In Florida, hurricane resiliency, very top of mind, very important, and results also in sometimes insurance savings. And so, high impact glass for that. In Florida for this, more effective curtain wall that's now going to be required. On the West Coast, hardening of your foundation to really help with seismic protections. And then, other projects could be brownfield renovations in some jurisdictions, asbestos and lead paint abatement in certain areas, if it's part of an energy related product, improvements needing to meet some of the new green building standards, and so on and so forth. In certain markets, if you're building to code or you're building slightly better than code, which most developers are doing these days, a large percentage of your hard and soft costs will already count. In some projects that we're doing, we're working on a very large one right now, we're 40% of the total project costs. The developer, it's a new construction ground up project. And in other projects, we're paying 100% of the renovation project. We have a developer that is taking out PTEC units and putting in heat pumps. We're paying for 100% of the hard and soft costs related to that because the entire project is efficient. And their desire for doing this is because they are going to be creating a better building, one that is more efficient. They're a long-term owner and they're seeing directly the energy savings. And it's a better tool to attract tenants, it's a multifamily asset, to come to their building. So there's many benefits and reasons why somebody would do this or not. We're also seeing people use this as a form of acquisition financing. If they're buying a recently completed building, the look back for CPACE in many states can be up to 3 years from TCO. What that means is if the TCO, temporary certificate of occupancy, was achieved within the last 3 years. So at the end of 2021, or at some point in 2022, or any point thereafter, if you've already built a building that has either built slightly better than code, or in some markets to code, because the code is so stringent now that it requires you to have these efficient improvements as part of the base building work that you're going to do, or you went above and beyond, then the next buyer can use this financing as a way to finance the project that they may not have built. It can be acquisition financing for them. The person who built the building can use this as what's called seller financing. They can use this to give credit for the work that was already done. And because it's fully transferable with the property, use this as a way to offer this financing to the next buyer and create a really effective form of financing to give credit for work that was already previously done. And so what we're finding is that more and more people are finding this financing a really effective tool to help solve a capital markets problem and really come up with a solution as a form of refinance capital, rescue capital, or acquisition or seller financing. And by the same token, we're finding that a number of developers are using this tool as a form of renovation or construction financing to help them start the project that they'd like to start, or incentivize them to build more efficient improvements as part of their project because they now have access to capital to help them put in measures they very much wanted to put in. And instead of value engineering, they can actually pay for them.
So, Laura, those are all incredible benefits for this type of financing. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, you recently announced a partnership with Carlyle that commits $1 billion to the origination of CPACE projects, the largest commitment to date. So what is it that you and Carlyle see about this form of private credit that others may have missed?
Great question. One of the things that I really appreciate about our partnership with Carlyle is they are very forward-thinking, very creative, and very much understand the opportunity in the space, not only from the sustainable improvement, but also the private credit applications within the asset-based finance world. So the CPACE market has been growing 52% year over year with less than 1% market penetration. And as we spoke about earlier, the benefits from a sustainability perspective are substantial. But what we're also seeing is a confluence of three things, and why we believe that this $1 billion and more will actually be a very meaningful way to help grow this industry, and one where we see a tremendous amount of runway. There's first, the three things are: one, the macro environment. There is now expanded access to CPACE. A lot of people historically didn't realize that not only the uses of CPACE, how large it could be used. We at Northbridge focus on deals north of $10 million, and we're working on a number north of $100 million. Historically, the market, which is CPACE market, has been around since 2008, has been really focused on what I would call the small to middle market and balance projects, which are south, a couple $100,000 or a couple $1 million. That market is very much active and very important for smaller scale projects. But what we're focusing on is the large scale institutional market, which right now has had a pullback in terms of financing, a reset of valuations, and being able to access this type of capital is a new tool that people previously didn't know that they had. That is further accelerated by the fact that there are 40 states now and growing that PACE is now available. When PACE started, it was only available in a handful of states. And I'm happy to announce this year that New York City has now come online. New Jersey will be online next year. Hawaii this past year. Georgia, some very major programs have not only made PACE eligible for people in their state to access it, but also many programs have also improved their availability of the financing to different projects and the requirements, allowing borrowers to be able to access more at a more effective way. On top of that, with the pullback in the market, what we're seeing is lack of access to liquidity, more requirements of states like New York, or cities, New York City with Local I-97, Boston with Berto, and 40 other states and growing, having more requirements. You have a confluence of lack of liquidity, focus on the requirements of sustainability, and now PACE available in these markets, plus also now having more liquidity in the space and people being aware of using it at a larger dollar amount, that it becomes a very interesting tool they didn't know that they had access to. And the market, we project, will continue to have substantial growth with a great risk-adjusted return for our investors.
Terrific. Well, that all sounds really good. I'm going to ask you, if you can, to just give us one brief example of how CPACE has actually worked in a project that you're focused on or that's already completed.
Sure. I think a great project is actually the Battery in Philadelphia. So the Battery is a project from Bluebird Adler with Wells Fargo as a senior lender, which was completed. Bluebird Adler did an incredible job taking an old power plant and renovating it into mixed-use projects ranging from multifamily to office and hospitality. The project was recently TCO'd, and they wanted to do the next phase. The loan had been out of balance. And so what happened was we were able to give the borrower and lender credit for work that previously had been done. They were able to take the money and use it to pay down Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo was able to then advance the next phase of dollars and reduce their at-risk dollars in the project. And in turn, we reduced the total cost of capital for both borrower and lender. The borrower then had to put more money in, but less actual dollars and at a lower cost of capital to them. So it not only unlocked the project, enabling them to do the next phase, it helped both the borrower and lender reset the project. We were able to structure our deal around the senior lender while we accrue during the initial extension period of the lender, and then we went interest only during their extension periods, really doing a matched term with the senior lender and really making it structured in a very effective way for the borrower, which also happens to be in an op zone. And so what I think is instructive about PACE is that we were able to really create an effective solution here for both the borrower and the lender and act as a passive liquidity injection. Another example I would just give while we're at it, because people may not realize this, is we were able to also recapitalize a project in California, which is the Residence in Berkeley. This is the first hotel built on Berkeley's campus, just outside the gates, in 40 years. And the hotel was built to a LEED standard. However, 2 years after completion, the construction loan needed to be taken out and the hotel was not yet stabilized. We were able to come in for a meaningful amount, $50 million, could have been more, and use that to bring down the cost of capital with 2 other lenders to take out the existing financing. In doing so, we were able to structure something where we can accrue the interest during the initial time the hotel needed to stabilize. We were able to create an effective form of leverage for both the first mortgage and mezz in the deal, and really create a very effective long-term financing opportunity and option for the borrower. And what counted there is a really good example of how people may not realize what works. Everything from LED lighting and HVAC and low flow fixtures to part of the curtain wall because of the seismic resiliency, and part of the foundation and concrete also for that same reason. And so we were able to be a meaningful part of the stack as part of a recapitalization because of the work that the borrower had already done. And they built a fantastic asset. And this enables them to have the optionality upon a refinance, whether they want to keep our financing on or not. But it wasn't a passive house asset, but they did build a really great project.
Terrific. That's a great example of how a property that's already in existence, right, can be refitted and redone through this process with a whole different approach to the financing for sustainability over time. Laura, thank you so much for spending time with us today. And I'm going to ask you where online our followers of the Sustainable Finance Podcast can learn more about Northbridge and C-PACE lending, and how can they get in touch with you for details on the topics that we've discussed in today's episode?
Thank you. So we're very active on LinkedIn. We try to make sure that all of our followers can be up to date with the new programs coming online, different ways to use it, recent deals we've been closing, exciting updates in the space. So I'd encourage anyone interested to follow us on LinkedIn. We also have a website, www.northbridge.ops.com, where we also have a lot of information about what's available for PACE, what states. And if anyone's interested, send us an email at info@northbridgeops.com, and we'd be happy to answer any questions and direct you to the appropriate group if it's not us, and also share how we can make your building more effective from a capital markets perspective, as well as more sustainable. We speak with many groups in the middle of due diligence, trying to figure out if this could work for their capital stack, as well as many groups who are in design development, actively building projects to see if they can use this financing to non-value engineer pieces, but rather put in more effective, sustainable solutions to their project.
Great. So, Laura, also, if there are links that you would like to provide to us that we can attach to this program so that people can dig in deeper on your processes and on C-PACE financing after the fact, we'd love to have those links to attach to this program. And I want to thank you very much again. Laura Rapaport is the founder and CEO of Northbridge, and I am Paul Ellis. This is the Sustainable Finance Podcast.